So what we've got ourselves here is the battle of the mid-range Android heavyweights. Two freshly launched sub £400 smartphones that offer impressive value for money. On the left here you've got Google's Pixel 4a, which finally launched after months and months of speculation, and on the right the very impressive OnePlus Nord. The Pixel 4a is just about the cheaper of this pair at 349 quid, but you do have a bit of a wait on your hands if you fancy one, because it won't be available until October the 1st on the Google Store. The OnePlus Nord, on the other hand, will cost you a round of drinks extra. This starts at 379 quid, but it does go on sale from August the 4th, so good news for any impatient types. The big question, of course, is which one is best for you. Let's do a full side-by-side comparison with the Pixel 4a and the OnePlus Nord to see how they stack up for camera tech, performance, battery life, everything else you need to know. And for more on the latest greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers. Now let's start with the design, and when I first got my mitts on the OnePlus Nord, I got to admit I thought it was a really nicely compact smartphone compared with a lot of the handsets I've handled in 2020 at just 6.44 inches. But the Pixel 4a is even more hand-pleasing at a positively dinky 5.8 inches. And when you size the two of them up side by side like this, it's quite clear that the Google Pixel 4a is the one to go for if you're after a mini mobile. And if we flip these phones around to the back, you get quite a different design on both of them too. With the Nord you get this absolutely stunning marble blue finish, although it is available in a straightforward black if you're still embracing your inner emo. Meanwhile, the Pixel 4a is only available in the one colour, unfortunately, which is rather simply titled just black. So clearly everyone at Google is still going through that awkward My Chemical Romance phase. And I'm definitely a fan of brighter, bolder colours, so it goes without saying the OnePlus Nord in this marble blue finish is my preferred version. And also it's a lot hardier than the Google Pixel 4a as well. You actually get Gorilla Glass 5 front and back, whereas of course the Google Pixel 4a is just plastic here on the back. And both these phones are actually pretty good at hiding greasy fingerprints and other smudgy marks and things like that. You might expect that it appears more easily on the glossy arse here on the OnePlus Nord, but actually they do show up a little bit here on the Pixel 4a despite that dark matte finish. When you want to unlock your phone, you've got an in-display fingerprint sensor here on the OnePlus Nord. Nice and nippy and responsive. I've had no issues with that whatsoever since I got it. And you actually get a rear-mounted physical fingerprint sensor here on the Pixel 4a, very old school. And again, nice and responsive, just a quick tap of your finger to that sensor and again, it goes straight in. And here on the OnePlus Nord as well, you've also got the alternative option of face unlock as well, which is something that you don't get supported on the Pixel 4a. It's quite handy if you're messing around in the kitchen, your fingers are a bit grubby. Again, just tap that power button, scans for you, and boom, straight in. So now let's talk software, and naturally you get the latest Android 10 on both of these smartphones, although in slightly different guises. Now first up, one of the best bits about the software on both of these smartphones is the fact that they are very well supported. So the Google Pixel 4a, of course, naturally you'll get 3 years of OS updates and security updates thrown in there as well. And the OnePlus Nord as well, not far behind, 2 guaranteed years of OS updates and 3 for the security again. So that's just a good bit of added peace of mind, something you don't get from quite a lot of other manufacturers. Now the Pixel 4a, as it is of course a Google branded handset, does sport a very stock version of Android 10, although you do get a few Pixel exclusive features on here that you won't find on other Android smartphones. So for instance, you've got Google's Recorder app, which can actually transcribe audio just like that Pixel 4 flagship, very handy for students and if you're doing interviews, things like that. And of course you've got that infamous Now Playing feature, which can listen in 24 hours a day and pick up on any songs that are playing in your vicinity and jot them down. Now OnePlus thankfully hasn't tinkered with the best Android elements on there, so as you can see here you've got full on dark mode, you've got those great gesture navigation controls, all the good stuff. But OnePlus has slathered its usual Oxygen OS launcher on top of Android, which to be fair retains a very stock look and feel while also adding in a few great bonus bits. The best of these is probably the Game Space feature, something you don't get on the Pixel 4a, which can block notifications and fine-tune your performance, etc, while you're gaming. Very good for keeping you focused. And with both of these phones you've also got a form of always on display as well. It is actually always on in the case of the Pixel 4a, as you can see there. With the OnePlus you do have to actually tap the screen in order to bring it up. Again, that's really handy just for seeing if you've got any waiting notifications or anything, so you know whether to bother unlocking your smartphone. Now when it comes to streaming video, well, both of these phones boast a gorgeous OLED display. The Nord is of course bigger, but either is perfectly comfortable for enjoying a good bit of Netflix, Disney Plus, whatever over a long lazy afternoon. The Full HD Plus resolution keeps images nice and sharp on both of these smartphones, and you've got full HDR support on the likes of Netflix as well, so you can really indulge in those nice sharp contrasts, the natural colours and everything too. And by default I definitely noticed that the colours were a little bit warmer, a little bit punchier here on the OnePlus Nord, but that's because the vibrant colour effects setting setting is activated by default. Because you dive into the Google Pixel 4a, color settings, and it's adaptive by default, but you can switch that up to boosted if you do like those warmer hues. Unfortunately, one option that you get in the OnePlus Nord that you don't get in the Pixel 4a is to do with the refresh rate. You can boost it from 60Hz to 90Hz for a really silky smooth finish, absolutely gorgeous, stunning stuff. Makes that performance seem all the better. And sadly here on the Google Pixel 4a, it tops off at 60Hz, so you don't get any of that gorgeous 90Hz action. And sure, it's certainly not an essential feature, but it is very much a nice to have. Of course, one disadvantage of the Nord compared with the Pixel is the fact you get this big fat dual selfie cutout wedge there in the corner, whereas it's just a single dinky little orifice here on the Pixel 4a. That said, if it does bother you, at least here on the OnePlus Nord, you do have the option of hiding it from view. It's not exactly an elegant solution, it basically just squishes the screen a bit, but it's there if you want it. And that's an option you don't seem to get here on the Pixel 4a. You're stuck with that orifice whenever you go full view. As for the audio, well, you do get a so-called stereo speaker setup here on the Pixel 4a. That earpiece is actually used for media as well, but it's very, very tinny. Let's face it, it's that bottom firing speaker that is pulling the real grunt of the weight here. And the case of the OnePlus Nord, it is just a bottom firing mono speaker setup. Works absolutely fine. Both of them are still perfectly loud and clear on that top volume, so fine for, kicking back with some YouTube or Netflix action while you're working in a busy kitchen, something like that. If you dive into the sound settings here on the OnePlus Nord, you've also got an audio tuner which can dynamically change the audio effects depending on what you're doing, watching a movie, listening to some music, etc., just to really get the most out of your sound. Unfortunately, you don't get that kind of option or any kind of equalizer or anything here on the Pixel. And both of these phones offer the brilliant live caption feature as well, which actually throws up text dynamically while you're watching a video or something. It's not quite perfect, but it's great if you are hard of hearing. Gives you an idea of what's going on. And now let's move on to performance, where the OnePlus Nord is once again the victor. You've got Qualcomm's Snapdragon 765G chipset packed in there, whereas the Pixel 4a it makes do with the Snapdragon 730. And while Google has pretty generously stuffed 6 gigs of RAM into the Pixel 4a, you get 8 gigs as standard in the OnePlus Nord. You can actually upgrade that to 12 gigabytes if you throw some more cash OnePlus's way. So the Snapdragon 765G inside the OnePlus Nord is more naturally suited to gaming on the go. That Adreno GPU has been given a bit of a boost, and I found that, yeah, you get a perfect frame rate on the likes of Call of Duty on those high detail settings, no worries whatsoever. That said, I have tested out Call of Duty again on those very high detail settings here on the Pixel 4a, and again it ran perfectly smooth, no worries whatsoever, so it's definitely giving you a competitive edge if you are a bit of a mobile gaming fan. That said, over time the OnePlus Nord should fare better with the latest Android titles. And another benefit of that 765G chipset is the fact that it comes with a built-in 5G modem as well, so the Nord is fully 5G ready when those networks do eventually roll out across the country. In the case of the Google Pixel 4a, sadly no 5G support, so you don't get that bit of future-proofing. Now, one of the potential drawbacks of the Pixel 4a's dinky size is the fact you've only got a 3140 mAh cell stuffed in there with 18-watt fast charging, and that's compared with the mighty 4115 mAh stuffed inside the Nord, which boasts faster 30-watt fast charging. However, the OnePlus Nord's battery does actually drain pretty quickly. It'll just about see you through a fairly intensive day, although you will just about be scraping it on occasions, as I have. In the case of the Pixel, thankfully that battery drains much slower, so you'll easily get a full day of use even with lots of stuff on the go. But one feature that you'll find on the OnePlus Nord that you won't find on the Pixel that I absolutely love is the optimized charging. What this does is it makes sure it doesn't overcharge the OnePlus Nord's battery if you leave it plugged in overnight, which of course most of us are guilty of doing. So hopefully over the long term that'll just prevent any damage, which will of course reduce your battery life. In the case of the Pixel 4a, you'll just have to get into good habits and try not to leave it charging all night long. And both these smartphones come with 128 gig of storage as standards, that's the base level, but neither offers micro SD memory card expandability, sadly. And now let's take a look at the camera tech, and as you can see, it's a very different setup on the OnePlus Nord compared with the Google Pixel 4a. Of course, you've got this pretty much standard quad lens setup here on the OnePlus, whereas the Google smartphone actually comes packing just a single rear camera lens, which is a very rare beast indeed in 2020. Now, a single shooter on the Google Pixel 4a is a 12 megapixel effort, whereas here on the OnePlus Nord, it's a 48 megapixel primary lens using Sony's IMX586 sensor. It does shoot at 12 megapixels by default, but you can quickly boost up to that maximum 48 megapixel resolution. A little tap of that icon up there. Now both phones are great, but the Google Pixel 4a is unsurprisingly better at shooting everyday photos. When it comes to the color capture, the Pixel just about edges out the OnePlus, offering impeccably natural hues in any kind of conditions. When it comes to the HDR smarts, the OnePlus Nord performs quite admirably, certainly better than previous OnePlus efforts, certainly doesn't do itself a disservice, but in the case of the Google Pixel 4a, again, it's the winner. You've actually got full control over the darker elements. You can brighten those up separately to the rest of the photo and give yourself a nice, gorgeously balanced shot when you need it. And when it comes to proper low light shots, well, the Pixel's night mode is again the winner, hands down, somehow managing to once again serve up photos with accurate colors as well as sharp detail, while everything looks that little bit warmer on the OnePlus Nord. And it's a thumbs up for the portrait smarts on both the OnePlus Nord and the Pixel 4a as well. I found the Pixel 4a did really well with that single lens setup, whereas it doesn't have the depth sensor that the OnePlus Nord does, but you still get that gorgeous bokeh background effect, lovely stuff. And of course, with that multi-lens setup here on the OnePlus Nord, you do also have an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle lens that you can play around with. Slightly obviously distorts the image and you get slightly warmer colors too, but you know, it does offer a bit of extra flexibility for those who want it. And you do also have a dedicated macro lens on the OnePlus Nord as well, which I've got to admit I find pretty much pointless. And if you chuck the OnePlus Nord and the Pixel 4a into video mode as well, we can shoot up to 4K resolution footage on both of these handsets. Decent image stabilization. You actually have a dedicated stabilizer mode here on the OnePlus Nord. Strong audio pickup and everything as well, so great looking stuff. And let's finish up with my favorite part of these camera comparisons, the selfie camera. Of course, you get a modest 8 megapixel effort here on the Google Pixel 4a, whereas the OnePlus Nord actually upgrades that to a 32 megapixel effort. But all the same, I found that certainly in strong light and things like that, you actually get better detail out of the Pixel 4a. It deals with that sort of stronger light definitely a lot better than the OnePlus Nord does. But again, with the Nord, you get that extra camera lens flexibility, so you can actually swap to a separate, I believe it's 8 megapixel and ultra wide angle lens. So as you can see, that just gives you a little bit more breathing space. Good news if you're trying to get some background action on the go or shoot you and a whole bunch of mates having fun in a post-plague apocalypse, whatever. And there you have it, my lovelies. That's how the fresh new Google Pixel 4a stacks up against the also pretty damn fresh OnePlus Nord. And the question is, of course, which one do you prefer? As you can see, they offer a very different proposition for a very similar sort of price. So please do slap your comments down below. My full OnePlus Nord review is live right now if you want to go check that out. And I've also compared with a whole bunch of other sub £400 5G phones, including the likes of the Moto G 5G Plus, the Realme X50 5G as well. So go check that out for more sexy comparison action. My Google Pixel 4a review is inbound, so stay tuned for that. Have yourselves a lovely day, people. Cheers. Love you.